The abandoned asylum loomed in the distance, a shadowy silhouette against the night sky. It had been abandoned for decades, left to rot and decay in the middle of the forest. But for Jake, it was a place of fascination and intrigue. He had always been drawn to abandoned buildings, and the asylum was no exception. Jake had heard stories about the asylum, about the patients who had been locked away there, and the experiments that had been conducted on them. He was curious about the place, and he knew that he had to explore it. Jake was a paranormal investigator, and he had been investigating haunted locations for years. He had seen and experienced many strange things in his line of work, but he had never encountered anything like the stories he had heard about the asylum. Jake recruited his team of investigators, including his close friend and fellow investigator, Lisa. They were skeptical at first, but Jake's enthusiasm was contagious, and they soon found themselves venturing into the dark, ominous building. As they walked through the empty halls, they could feel the weight of history all around them. They saw the remnants of old medical equipment and the signs of struggle and chaos that had taken place in the past. They set up their equipment, including cameras, audio recorders, and EMF detectors, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal activity that was rumored to occur in the asylum. But as they began their investigation, they began to notice strange things happening. Doors would slam shut on their own, and they would hear footsteps in the distance. They tried to brush it off, but the feeling of unease grew stronger with each passing moment. They soon realized that they were not alone in the asylum. Something was watching them, and they could feel its malevolent presence all around them. As they continued to investigate, they stumbled upon an old laboratory. It was filled with strange equipment and jars of unknown substances. Jake's curiosity got the best of him, and he picked up a vial of strange liquid. Suddenly, the room began to shake, and the walls started to crumble around them. The vial slipped from Jake's hand and shattered on the ground. The team managed to escape the crumbling laboratory, but they realized that they had unleashed something dark and dangerous. They could feel the malevolent presence growing stronger, and they knew that they had to leave the asylum before it was too late. But as they tried to leave, they found that the doors were locked, trapping them inside the asylum. They were forced to keep moving, dodging the malevolent spirits that seemed to be everywhere. As they made their way through the asylum, they could hear the sounds of whispers and footsteps behind them. They knew that they were being followed, and they could feel the malevolent presence growing stronger. Finally, they reached the exit, only to find that it was locked from the outside. They were trapped inside the asylum, with no way out. As they searched for another way out, they realized that they had stumbled upon a dark secret. The asylum had been the site of terrible experiments, and the spirits of the patients who had been locked away there still roamed the halls. Jake and his team realized that they had to put an end to the malevolent presence that had been unleashed. They found an old ritual, and they began to chant, hoping to banish the spirits from the asylum. As they chanted, they could feel the spirits growing weaker, and they knew that the ritual was working. Finally, the spirits were banished, and the asylum was once again silent and empty. Jake and his team emerged from the asylum, shaken. The team returned to their office, exhausted and shaken from their experience. They reviewed the evidence they had collected, and they were shocked at what they found. The audio recordings were filled with the sounds of voices and footsteps, even though no one had been around. The cameras had captured shadowy figures moving through the halls, and the EMF detectors had spiked in areas where there was no electrical activity. They knew that what they had experienced was real, and they couldn't shake the feeling that the malevolent presence they had encountered was still out there, waiting to be unleashed once again. Jake couldn't stop thinking about the asylum, and he knew that he had to go back. He wanted to investigate further, to learn more about the experiments that had been conducted there, and to find out what had happened to the patients who had been locked away. He recruited a new team of investigators, including some of the best in the business. They were skeptical at first, but Jake's passion and determination won them over. Inside the laboratory, they found evidence of horrific experiments. There were cages filled with bones and rotting flesh, and strange machinery that seemed to have been used to control the patients. As they continued their investigation, they began to experience strange phenomena. They saw shadowy figures moving through the halls, and they heard voices whispering in the darkness. They knew that they were not alone, and that the malevolent presence they had encountered before was still with them, but they were determined to see their investigation through to the end. They continued to collect data and evidence even as the malevolent presence grew stronger. Finally, they uncovered the truth. The asylum had been a site of horrific experiments conducted on the most vulnerable members of society. The patients had been subjected to torturous treatments, and many had died as a result. The malevolent presence that had haunted the asylum was the collective spirits of those who had been mistreated and abused. They were angry and vengeful, and they wanted justice. The team knew that they had to put an end to the malevolent presence once and for all. They performed a ritual calling on the spirits to rest in peace and to find the justice they had been denied in life. As they chanted, they could feel the spirits growing weaker until finally they were gone. The asylum was silent once again, and the team knew that they had done the right thing. Jake and his team left the asylum, feeling a sense of closure and resolution. They had uncovered the truth about the asylum, and they had put an end to the malevolent presence that had haunted it for so long, and they were ready to face them no matter what horrors lay in store.